Hi guys, in preparation for our July 2014 board meeting where we're going to talk about creating the future's global impact plan, I wanted to share with you the plan that we have been working um, in all of this time, because it's not as if for the past 3 years of this organization's existence we've just sort of willy-nilly been creating stuff. We've actually had a plan. It's been a plan that Dimitri and I created. It has not been comprehensive. It has not included organizational effectiveness because when we created it, there was no organization. But it did come from a vision. It did establish the preconditions for success. And so I wanted to walk you through that just so that you know what we have been using, so that it might inform our conversation. When Dimitri and I talked, and this was back in 2010, so we are talking about now 4 years ago. This was when we made the decision to create this organization, to start leaping in at the deep end before we had even given up our consulting practice. We had this plan in place. When we talked about what our vision was, what we found was very similar to what we have all been talking about here. And the words that we used were, and I have to share with you, it's sort of fun to look back at this document because we've been working it, but that doesn't mean that we've always had the document in front of us. A world that relates to itself from humanity's highest potential. That we are thriving physically, materially, intellectually, spiritually, creatively. And that this is how people be with each other naturally in our day-to-day. That cultural systems will have changed and that what we expect from each other is that we will bring out the best in each other. And so that was our vision. Not very far off from the things that we have talked about over and over again in various forums over the past 4 years with you guys. So what will it take for a world where everyone is bringing out the best in each other, where we are living well collectively and individually? What we found as an immediate precondition is the assumption that this is how people will do their work, that it was coming from a place of doing rather than being. It is how systems lead them to do their work, and that those systems, those doing systems, have changed. Those could be laws, they could be how businesses expect to run, it could be how community organizations expect to run, but the systems that support the doing have changed so that people expect that this is how they're going to do their work. A precondition to that was that it would not be uncommon for people to be thinking in this way and doing in this way. So there was the precondition that it had to be common, that we assumed that this is how it was going to be done. But before that, it had to at least not be uncommon. That, yeah, I've heard of that, that I know organizations that have chosen to do their work in this way. That systems wouldn't have all changed, that it would still require individuals to make choices and individual organizations to make choices, but that it's common. It's an individual choice, but it's not an uncommon choice. And then moving backwards from that, before it could be not uncommon or common, early adopters needed to try stuff. So we needed people who were going to try new systems of both doing and being, because it was going to be uncommon. So we would move from it being uncommon, and early adopters would be trying things, to it not being uncommon. So yeah, I've heard of that. It would be common. And then it would move into everybody. It is very common, and we assume that this is the way we do our work, which will eventually lead to this is the way we be in our work. It becomes easy to see then where the 4 pillars of our mission step in there, because if what we wanted was to create conditions where people could try these things, prove they work, so that more and more people could try them and they would be less and less uncommon, we needed to do the R&D work, which is the learning and the trying stuff. And then whatever we learned from that, we needed to share with those early adopters by educating them, demonstration, and bringing people together around different conversations. So you can see where our chain of causality was if we learn together, explore together, try things together in an R&D lab. If we do education programs for what we have learned, if we demonstrate by being online, by being whatever, what we are learning, if people can see it by actually seeing it, if we bring together different conversations, early adopters will have what they can start to move forward with, which we're already seeing. From there, those early adopters will bring it into organizations where more and more organizations and systems, not just nonprofit organizations, but you'll notice I talked about businesses and business systems. More and more groups will be doing this, so it is less uncommon. And the more those groups are doing it, the more common it will become that this is how people do their work. And from that doing, this is how people will be with each other. So that is the chain of causality that we were seeing as we started to ask, okay, now we've got the 4 pillars of our mission, and now all of this makes sense. Okay, so from that, we could create goals. And the goals all centered around strengthening those 4 pillars so that early adopters could try stuff so that it would create that domino effect. There's 2 ways that we have established goals. One is it has come directly out of board conversations, and I want to talk about that one in a little bit. The second is that we actually used the framework that we've developed, the Continuum of Potential, to bring people to what is possible. And so I thought I would go over, for those of you who are new and not familiar with the Continuum of Potential, I wanted to go over that a little bit with you so that you can see how, again, walking backwards from that vision, coming up with these pillars of our mission. Okay, what do you do in education? Do you just do a bunch of programs? What do you do in demonstration? Do you just do a bunch of stuff? No. How did we use the Continuum of Potential, again, to create that chain of causality? The Continuum of Potential is a framework for creating an environment for people to step into their own potential. It is a framework that starts from meeting people where they are and then opening the door just a crack so that they can step into the next stage of their own development and their own potential. What we found in our analysis is that there are 7 stages that people go through as they are thinking about, or sometimes not thinking about, because several of those stages are sort of pre-thinking about their willingness and readiness to step into something new and exciting. That very, very first stage is the if only stage. Everything is just fine if only we had more money. Everything is just fine if only we had more customers. Everything is just fine if only we had better clients. From there, people move into the things will never change stage. And that stage is about, well, we've gotten more customers and nothing's changed. Or we've gotten more money and nothing's changed. Or we've gotten more clients and nothing's changed. And that's that sense of frustration. Moving out of that is a willingness to go from things will never change to, okay, maybe I'll try something new. And from trying something new, they'll move to doing that new thing. I want to dive in. I want to learn everything about it. This is fabulous. From there, they move from I'll do it to I'm doing it. I'm practicing it. They move from I'm doing it to I am it. And then they move from I am it to I want to teach others to do and be this work. And so using that continuum of potential for our education programs, for our R&D work, for our convening conversations, what we find is we can meet people where they are, no matter what stage of the continuum they are at, and we can open the door for them to reaching into the next stage. And if we can do that often enough and well enough, targeted enough, that we can actually create those shifts. And we watched that happen during the panel conference. We have watched that happen over and over again in our education programs. People actually move through those stages along the continuum. So that is the plan for how will we accomplish our mission. But it's not fleshed out. It's by no means has an organizational wellness component because, like I said, 4 years ago, we did not have an organization to make well. We're finally almost to that stage right now. I also want to share with you, because the other part of working with the continuum is that it also creates a revenue model and a business model that we are pretty convinced, once we get an infusion of startup, some rocket fuel to push this booster into the air, that we can sustain by using this continuum. And what you'll see on the screen here is the continuum looking at what will people pay at various points along that continuum. What you see is that if they're in that all we need is more customers, or all we need is a logo, or all we need is a whatever, they won't pay anything. They think they need this one small discrete thing, and they know that they can get that one small discrete thing for free online. And so they will pay the equivalent of a blog post. They will read. And that is actually paying with their attention. From there, they will possibly move into, if they're frustrated enough and the information is targeted enough, they will possibly pay as much as, at least in the nonprofit world, $9.99. In the business world, they may pay significantly more than that. It depends on how frustrated they are, and it depends on how much that frustration has stopped them where they believe nothing's possible. Because if they believe nothing is possible, then they are not going to try anything. So it would have to be really inexpensive. From there, again, in the classic traditional nonprofit, and I really do say that with all intention of, oh, we're so poor, world, in the I'll try stage, I'll try something new. I might read a book for $39.95. I might go to a webinar or a workshop for $49. And then from there, they'll dive in. They'll attend our immersion course. So they will pay $1,800 plus airfare to get wherever they're going. And from there, they're paying to maintain their education and to keep moving forward. Many of our fellows have become seasoned participants, where they've come back to the immersion class 2 times and 3 times. They take graduate level webinars. And so if we have a grid like this for every audience we want to reach, from consultants to foundations to business people to corporate leaders to people in academia in various places, that we can simultaneously provide a revenue stream that is sustainable and create the kind of change that we want to see in the time frame that we want to see it. So that has been the model that we have been working with for the past several years. It is where we have plugged in the programs that we are working on, being as small a staff and all volunteer staff as we have been, and have already started to see shifts from the continuum, which is why I'm hopefully going to be writing a book about that as part of my sabbatical this year. I then wanted to share with you how our goals have also come out of the board setting goals for us. Because in 2013 was really the first year, end of 2012, beginning of 2013, that the board started to lay down its expectation. It was never in an official vote of goals, but it was always in, we need to get funded, we need to get funded, we need to get funded. We have volunteer resources, we have all sorts of resources, but we need to have salaried employees who can do the work. And that has been loud and clear. And so last year in 2013, what we realized is precursor to that, again, that chain of causality, that if nobody knew who we were and we did not have visibility and credibility, that it was going to be a lot harder for us to find the kinds of funding partners that we want. And that in the meantime, we needed to stabilize what we had. We needed to know that we weren't going to worry about closing the doors next month if some money doesn't come in. We needed to know that we weren't going to have to make emergency appeals to the board, which you guys will notice, it may even be 2 years since we've made an emergency appeal to the board. And that's entirely because of the work we did last year to put solid footing under the work that we're doing so that we can continue, so that we can go out and look for those funding partners. And so towards that end, part of the stabilizing, the interesting thing about stabilizing is it wasn't about money. Stabilizing was about all of those other resources that we talk about. And it was particularly about nurturing, husbanding, caring for our human resources. And I hate using the word resources, but our human potential, our people. We saw people like Gail in 2013 step into both the teacher role, saying, "I want to teach," and the board chair role. So by the beginning of 2014, she was ready to step into that piece. Nancy has come forward and said, "I want to teach on behalf of Creating the Future. I want to teach the immersion course." We watched our communities develop, our Facebook community, our NPCons community. We also watched a community start to develop around the people who want to be teachers, not necessarily yet teaching immersion, but a faculty community of people who want to teach our flash classes, a webinar, write a blog post. In terms of visibility, our demonstration was the biggest piece of that, obviously. Our demonstrating online, our demonstrating at the panel conference, the PR that we received last year, all of those pieces that we worked so hard to do. You guys all remember the video, which I'm going to link to below, of all of our accomplishments last year that made us tired just to think about it. This year, we're finally able to say those are solid enough that I can spend my time going out and looking for funding partners. So I hope you're seeing how that big vision, those conditions that needed to be in place, from this is the way we be in our world to this is how we do things, to yeah, I've heard of people doing things that way, to ooh, no, I haven't heard, but that sounds really interesting, to creating our programs so that it creates that ripple effect, and doing all of that through the continuum of potential. I hope that helps you to see what we've been looking at and working at very diligently for the past several years, that have us now at the point where we're ready to have a comprehensive plan that we've all created together, that isn't something that just Dimitri and Hildy hammered out over a weekend and have been working, but is all of ours together, and that provides us with a way that we can say, when people say, "Oh yeah, how are you going to accomplish that mission in 10 years?" we can say, "Here's how. And here's how we're going to support that. And here's what we need in terms of organizational effectiveness for that." So I hope this makes sense to you guys. And I really am looking forward to the discussion on Monday. Bye-bye.